Hey guys, how's it going? Brandon here. So today I want to talk to you guys about the defenses in Path of Exile because if you're playing a hardcore character, it's a very important thing not to die. And I guess if you're playing a softcore character, but who really wants to play that? Anyway, the main thing is that in this game, it's very important to stack defenses so you can actually be offensive. If you're taking way too much damage in melee, even as a ranged, class, because in the right map, in the right situation, in the right kind of area, you will still get hit just as hard as any melee would as a ranged character. So you got to stack this stuff up, and you got to kind of know how it works so you can make your decisions accordingly. So I'm going to start up here. Seems like I'm getting stalked in this zone, but basically this is my wand character, and I want to go over this character's defenses because he uses most of them, and kind of show you guys how they work. So obviously you have the resists, you get resist, they cap out at 75, you can increase the cap if you want through many different means, no big deal. And it's very important to get the resist at least at cap. If you want to get them 5% over cap, you can get the elemental adaptation node, or you can run the purity aura, but that's kind of standard stuff. Everyone needs to do that. Those aren't really options. That is like a necessary thing. And as such, when you look at an item, you can see that the resists, there's usually many of them. And that's because resists are suffixes. And suffixes are pretty much just resists and stats when it comes to armor. And the stats, not very important. So this item here, it has 12 strength, 15 fire resist, and 10 chaos resist as its 3 suffixes. However, all the other defenses in the game are prefixes. So what does that mean? Well, when you look at this armor, it has the following stats. It has armor percent, it has an armor percent hybrid roll, and it has life. And those 3 are prefixes. Now, if you take an evasion piece, the percent evasion is a prefix. And in the case for boots, the movement speed is a prefix. When it comes to a hybrid piece of armor, it won't have like one of the 2. For instance, when you see increased armor and energy shield, that's like a hybrid, percentage increase. That's how it shows up on hybrid items. But the plus stat, the bonus the stat, in this case plus 113 energy shield, that is also a prefix, and that only comes in single values even on hybrid items. So the prefixes on this item, defensively of course, are 113 energy shield, and then 96% energy shield and armor, which multiplies the prior stat, and then plus 74 life. And similarly with other pieces of gear, just life, and a helmet here with percent armor, life, and in this particular case, rarity. So there are a lot of prefixes, but the way they work is you can't really get too much of everything. So for instance, if I had this shield, I couldn't get 2% armor and energy shield rolls on top of armor, on top of energy shield as a flat bonus, on top of life. That would be 5 stats, all prefixes. You couldn't get that. So you kind of have to choose. Typically, when it comes to choosing between the stats, it's a fairly obvious thing that breaks down into 2 categories. If you're life-based, you need a life roll, and at the very least, the large primary percentage modifier. So like 96% armor and energy shield would be it in this case. That is a very big roll. However, when you're using energy shield items, the plus bonus, the static bonus, as well as arguably on evasion items, is very large compared to the base item. So this item actually has less than 100 energy shield as a base, but it has plus 113, so it more than doubles from the plus, and then the percentage multiplies it all. So this item has like 4 to 5 times more energy shield than it would as a base, and that's why it's considered a very, very strong item. Now, my character doesn't use energy shield because I use the Eldritch Battery talent that converts the energy shield I have into mana. But the main 2 things to consider when working on your defenses is your effective life, your life plus energy shield. For characters who go CI, which is Chaos Inoculation, their life becomes 1, but they're immune to chaos damage, so they can stack all energy shield. In that case, on those characters, it's mostly important to work on items that have as high energy shield as possible and disregard life. So this is a pretty good item for a CI character despite having life because it stacks energy shields so effectively. But the idea is, in this game, eventually, whatever kind of defense you stack, as you will see, you will eventually get hit for a huge hit. And there's really no way to bypass that thing, consistently. So that aside, you want to have as much resist as possible. You want to have them capped. You want to have as much life or energy shield or both as possible. If you go all the energy shield with low life, you might get stunned a lot because, as you know, the stun mechanics and the elemental, debuff, all that stuff works as a proportion to your life. So you kind of have to work around that if you go CI, but that'll be a different story. But ideally, you want as big of a buffer as you can before your character dies. So that is the basics of the defense. You want as much life or energy shield as possible. The secondary defenses, in my case, are armor and block and evasion. The simplest one is block. If you use a shield, you have the listed block plus whatever you have from your talent tree. In my case, none. However, you can exceed this with Tempest Shield if you want. And if you dual wield, you have, I believe, 15% chance to block as well, something like that, I don't know. The main problem with block is if you stack it really, really high, you actually are stunned for your base stun duration when you block an attack. So, you kind of have to prepare for that. You can't have a huge amount of block and, be susceptible to stuns because all you'll be doing is getting stunned from your blocks. So you kind of have to keep that in mind. But block, the roll just happens like dice. So if you have, let's say I had a 25% chance to block instead of a 24, it'd roll a 1 out of 4. Every time I'm about to be hit, 1 out of 4 times I won't take any damage, but I'll still be stunned by the attack, even though the original attack may not have stunned me. So that's very important. The other kind of defense, which some people think it works like block, is evasion. So I have 3,000 evasion. The percentage evasion in the window is not a very important number because of the following. It takes into consideration what a crappy mob of my level would hit me. So most mobs in the game have like a standardized level of evasion and accuracy, and damage as well. And there are no level 85 mobs in this game. So because of that, this is largely skewed. And with certain calculations, you can kind of figure out how it works. But that's not really important for this video. What is important to know is how evasion works. So my chance to evade is probably in the 20s or 30s against mobs that I'll typically face in maps. And these mobs will have a tough time hitting me consistently because evasion is not like a dice roll like it is with block. Evasion is systematic. So let's say I had a 30% chance to dodge the attack of a particular monster. So when the monster engages me, when he first begins to attack me, the way it works is it'll pick like a number from between 1 and 100. So let's say in the 1 to 100 roll, I roll 50. Okay? So the monster's chance to hit is 70, right? So it'll add 70 to 50, and if it's over 100, it'll hit me. So is it over 100, the first attack will be 120? Yes, it is. So the first attack will hit me. But, now I'm at 120, so it hits me again, it'll be at 90. It'll fall short, so it'll miss. And, it may not work exactly like that in terms of the numbers, but in concept, that is exactly how it works. It's systematic. So if a mob has a 50% chance to hit you, for instance, it will never hit you twice in a row, ever. So that's a really good thing to keep in mind. Let me explain how armor works so you can compare the two as well. So armor is proportion to damage. So I have 6,500 armor. It means that mobs that don't do much damage won't hit me for very much at all. It means that shitty mobs like these will practically hit me for no damage, as you can tell. I just destroy these things pretty easily. And the important thing with armor is that if you take a huge hit, you will mitigate practically none of it. Because armor, the percentage that is reduced if the hit is larger. So while these mobs hit me for no damage, their base damage might be like, let's say 500. But when Bruise comes along and hits me for like 3,000 base damage, that damage is not going to be reduced by like 70 or 80% like it is here. It'll be reduced by like 10, maybe 20 if I'm lucky. So in the end, in that situation, I need a huge HP buffer. if I get hit. I can't bypass it with armor. Evasion, while it doesn't reduce the amount per hit, it reduces the number of hits. So while that 3,000 hit might be a little bit bigger, over time I will take less damage. The problem is, when you take like 3,000 damage, both the defenses kind of suck. But when you take a small amount of damage, both the defenses are pretty good. That's why it's fairly balanced in a way. Now, when it comes to killing monsters, like just crappy ones all day, it's fairly effective. Either one can work. It's really most important to have a high HP pool, so you have life regeneration, or you just have a bigger buffer, or if you use lifesteal like I do, it's very important because lifesteal caps out at 20% of your life per second. That's why the quality bonus on this gem is life leech rate, which exceeds that just slightly. So you can kind of regenerate more life, or if you have energy shield, you have a bigger buffer, you can regenerate more of it when you're out of combat. Those sorts of things. Those sorts of things are really important when you consider like the big hits and the small hits, because you have a more effective use of your armor and evasion. Now there are a few things that some people like to debate. When it comes to armor versus evasion, people really like to talk about this iron reflex talent, like, oh, you convert all the evasion to armor, this talent sucks and whatnot. The reason evasion is good is because if attack does partly elemental damage, which it will often do if you're doing endgame maps, the evasion avoids the hit in addition to the elemental portion of the hit, while armor will only reduce the physical portion. So that's kind of good. But when it comes to taking boss damage, you're kind of screwed in either case. The flip side is that the most dangerous attacks in this game are like shield charges, which can hit for like 2, maybe 3,000. While the hit is really big, shield charges are 100% hit attacks. So evasion actually does nothing. And I believe this follows on a few other attacks as well that I may not be aware of. But in any case, the point is that against some of the most dangerous attacks in the game, evasion does absolutely nothing. While armor does, just a little bit because the hits are so big, armor helps you against the most dangerous attacks in this game, while evasion doesn't. That for me is really the biggest deciding factor. Personally, I don't like iron reflexes that much, but it is a very, very good talent if you are in that area to get it anyway. Now, the next thing I want to show you guys is, while you have like these mechanics to avoid small hits and all the good stuff, both evasion and armor have mechanics to avoid the bigger hits. So for armor, if you're stacking a lot of armor, you can use endurance charges. So you have 3 endurance charges right now. You can see that the estimated damage reduction went up by 15%. And what it does is each endurance charge reduces the hit regardless of how much damage you would take by 5%. So even if you get hit for like 1,000,000 damage, it will still reduce 5%. It won't be proportional to the damage dealt like the numerical armor that is from your items. So that's a very important thing to note. And as well, you can use the Enfeeble Curse to reduce the amount of damage that they do. Cursed enemies deal 34% less damage. However, Enfeeble is the mechanic for evasion, because Enfeeble, especially a quality Enfeeble, you can see cursed enemies have 56 reduced accuracy rating. When it comes to calculating if the target can hit you, that is a huge amount. And even though you are evasion based, you are still able to use endurance charges. So the way these two mechanics works, the Enfeeble and the endurance charges, it kind of allows you to boost your defenses when a monster is going to do tremendous damage, like Brutus or a boss in any case, really. Where with endurance charges, you can make armor more additionally effective, and with Enfeeble, you can make evasion, more effective. So that's kind of how it works. You need to know the abilities that, amplify your defenses, but primarily you kind of need to make a decision, because you need to know what you're looking for on items. If you want the energy shield or the life, or if you want the armor or the evasion, or both, or all, or 3, you kind of have to plan it out so you can know how to match it up, and you can know what to expect from the game by knowing all the mechanics. So hopefully you guys learned something from my little speech today about the defenses, and maybe your hardcore character could have lived had you known this information ahead of time. But in any case, There's always more characters, always more time. Play the Paths of Exile, and I hope you guys have as much fun as I do playing it. See you guys tomorrow.